All right. Let's jump right into a career path that I think you're really going to love.
Oh, sounds exciting. I'm ready.
It is. We're talking about civil drafters.
I've always been curious about that.
Yeah, for good reason. These are the folks who take those blueprints, from that kind of dream stage and turn them into reality.
Right, right.
It's all about shaping the world around us. The
Yeah.
roads we drive on, the bridges we cross, even the homes we live in. Civil drafters have their hands in all of it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And you've given us a really interesting set of sources about this career. We're going to go through everything from what they actually do day to day to like how much they can earn.
Oh, excellent. I'm excited to dive into this.
Me too. So let's kick things off by getting a clear picture of what these civil drafters really do. I mean, it's got to be more than just like drawing lines on paper, right?
Oh, you're right. It's way more dynamic than people might think. Yeah,
Yeah.
technical drawing, that's like the core skill, right? But it's how they apply it in the real world.
Mm.
Think about it. A civil drafter takes, let's say, a concept for a skyscraper or maybe a brand new highway overpass, and they turn it into this incredibly detailed plan.
Wow.
And construction crews, they actually use these plans, right, to
Yeah.
build the thing.
Oh, wow. So they're kind of like the translators,
They
taking
are.
this big, grand vision and turning it into like the nuts and bolts of making it actually happen.
That is a fantastic way to put it. They are translators between imagination and reality. And that whole translation process, it takes a surprising amount of creativity, actually.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They might be creating sketches for buildings, mapping out entire neighborhoods, like using those topographical maps,
Right.
which, just to be clear, those show the contours of the land.
Yeah.
Or they could even be, get this, digitally reconstructing existing structures.
Oh, wow. I never even thought about the whole reconstruction aspect. That's got to take serious attention to detail.
Absolutely. And that's actually a key thing about this field. Accuracy is paramount.
Yeah.
Because even a small error in a drawing, that can lead to huge, huge consequences when you're actually building something.
For sure. Makes you realize the weight of their work.
Big time.
It makes me wonder, too, about like the work environment. Do you picture them always at a desk?
Right.
Or, because you mentioned like topographical maps earlier.
Yeah.
Is there an on-site component, too?
You are so right. It's not just sitting at a computer all day, although that is a big part of it, but there are definitely times when they have to get out in the field. This could be to take some really precise measurements, maybe verify what the existing conditions of a site are. Sometimes, you just need to get a feel for the environment that you're actually designing for.
That makes sense. Yeah. So it's a nice blend. Getting out there in the real world, but also working on those detailed drawings.
Exactly. Exactly.
Speaking of the drawings, our sources talk a lot about needing certain tech skills, especially with CAD software.
Oh, yeah. CAD software is huge in this field.
It sounds pretty essential for a civil drafter these days.
Oh, absolutely. It's how most of the drawings and plans are created nowadays. Like,
Yeah?
CAD software has totally revolutionized how things are done in the field. But, and this is important,
Yeah.
it's constantly changing. New software, updates, it's just nonstop.
So you can't just like learn one program and then you're good to go for your entire career.
Nope, definitely not.
Right.
You got to be ready to adapt to all kinds of new technologies and be a lifelong learner if you're in this field.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like, I don't know, any job in tech, really. You got to stay one step ahead.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so speaking of preparing for this kind of career, how do people even get into it?
That's a great question.
Like, what kind of education do you usually need?
Well, the good news is that there are actually a few different paths you can take.
Okay, good.
Some employers, they might hire you right out of high school, especially if you've already got some solid computer skills. But to really stand out from the crowd, and especially if you want to, climb that career ladder,
Yeah,
a post-secondary education is definitely the way to go.
makes sense.
Yeah, so think like vocational schools, community colleges, anywhere that offers specialized training in things like drafting and design.
Okay, and I'm assuming some math courses would probably be pretty helpful, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Maybe even like some architecture thrown in there.
You're totally on the right track.
Okay.
You need a really good grasp of math that's crucial, and obviously coursework in computer-aided design. I mean, it's in the name CAD.
Right, of course.
And while you don't need a full-on architecture degree, knowing something about architectural principles is never going to hurt.
Okay. Cool. So there's definitely options, but it sounds like that extra education after high school can really give you an advantage.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about the skills. Now let's talk about the realities of actually doing the job.
Okay, yeah.
I do appreciate that our sources didn't shy away from talking about both the pros and the cons.
Always important to have a balanced perspective.
Exactly. So let's start with the good stuff. Why would someone even want to be a civil drafter? What are the big perks?
Well, one of the biggest ones is the stability of the job market. Construction isn't going anywhere, and all those designs always need someone to make them a reality.
Yeah, that's true. We'll always need new buildings, roads, just like infrastructure in general.
Exactly. So that means skilled workers are always going to be in demand, which, usually leads to pretty good earning potential.
Oh, okay. And that's always a good thing.
Right. But it's also a career where there's a lot of room to grow.
Oh, really? Interesting. Tell me a little more about that. Like, what does climbing the career ladder actually look like for a civil drafter?
Well, picture this. You start out as a junior drafter.
Okay.
You're working on smaller parts of bigger projects, learning the ropes from the more experienced folks.
Makes sense.
But as you gain experience and, build up your expertise, you can move up. You can become a senior drafter, take on bigger and more complex projects, maybe even lead a team. You could even, and this is really cool, you could start your own firm someday.
Wow, okay. So there's a real path for moving up in this field. That's really encouraging to hear. But, let's be honest. No job is perfect. So what are some of the downsides, the challenges someone considering this career should be prepared for?
Yeah, that's fair. Honestly, for some people, it's the repetition that they find tough.
Oh, okay.
You're often working with some very specific guidelines and codes, so there's not a ton of room to get super creative.
So it's probably not the best fit for somebody who, like, really wants to just let loose with their creativity all the time?
Right, that's probably a good way to put it. Though I'd argue there's a different kind of creativity involved in problem solving within those limits.
That's a really good point. It's like finding solutions within a structure.
Exactly.
I bet that really appeals to a certain type of person.
Oh, for sure. And this kind of leads into another challenge.
Yeah.
You have to be detail-oriented. I mean, really detail-oriented.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because even a small mistake on a drawing, that can turn into a huge headache when they actually start building.
Oh, yeah, talk about pressure. And speaking of pressure deadlines, I know the sources also talked about the potential for long hours, especially when you're trying to meet deadlines.
Totally, yeah. Like a
Hmm.
lot of careers, there are going to be times when you get to put in some extra hours, got to be willing to hustle a bit to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely got to think about work-life balance.
Right. It sounds like this is a career for someone who's ready to be dedicated, put in the work when it's needed.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's true for a lot of professions, really, right? If you want to get to a certain level, it takes that kind of dedication.
That's a good point, but it's about figuring out what matters most to you. And speaking of finding what works, one of our sources mentioned a platform called RoleCatcher,
Oh,
and it sounds like it's super useful for anyone thinking about a career in civil drafting. You ever heard of it?
I have heard of it, RoleCatcher, but I don't know a ton about it, honestly. What is it like? How does it actually work?
Okay, so imagine it's like your career coach,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
but specifically for civil drafting.
Got it.
It helps you really tailor your resume and your portfolio
Okay.
to make you stand out to those potential employers.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and they even have tools to help you get ready for interviews,
Oh, nice.
which can make a huge difference.
For sure. So it's not just about finding jobs, it's about actually like getting those jobs.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that extra edge.
Very cool. It seems like a really, really useful resource for anyone, trying to break into this field.
Oh, totally.
Going through all of this, it really strikes me how much civil drafting is this blend of like really strong technical skills, but also that problem-solving mindset.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like a puzzle, you know? You get these big ideas, and then you have to figure out how to make them real.
You've got it. It takes that meticulous attention to detail,
Yeah.
but you also got to be able to get creative to find solutions within those specific rules.
Yeah, it's that perfect balance of like precision and then also that ingenuity.
Absolutely.
Speaking of the future, we talked a lot about traditional construction, our sources did,
Right.
but what about where things are headed?
Yeah.
Like, how is 3D printing and all of these other, crazy technological advances,
Right.
how's it all going to impact this field?
That is a really, really great question. And honestly, it's one that I think everyone in the industry is grappling with right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
these sources that we looked at, they focused on what's happening now.
Right.
But it's so obvious that, like, being able to adapt to learn these new technologies, I mean,
Yeah.
that is going to be essential.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like how CAD software, that changed everything. These new technologies, 3D printing, AI, all of that, they have the potential to completely reshape how we think about design and how we approach construction.
So continuous learning, that's not just like a nice thing to have in this field. It's absolutely essential if you want to stay relevant.
100%. And it's something to be excited about,
Yeah.
not scared of.
Yes. It's like you
Yeah,
got to have that drive to be on the cutting edge, to be willing to, take on these new challenges.
exactly.
Well, I think that is the perfect place to wrap things up. For everyone out there interested in a career as a civil drafter, I hope that this deep dive has given you a good starting point.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's a career that has a lot to offer: stability, that
Yeah.
earning potential that we talked about, and let's be real, a chance to literally shape the world that we live in.
I love that.
Right. From roads to bridges to those buildings,
Mhm.
it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it really is a career that lets you combine those technical skills with that creative problem solving, like we talked about. And as technology keeps changing, it's only going to get more interesting.
Couldn't agree more. Best of luck to you all out there and happy drafting.